Hi, welcome back to another advocacy update. I'm Jen Goodale, and I'm joined today by Lila Quintiliani from our benefits department here at MOAA. And we want to talk to you about something called dependent care flexible spending accounts, which is a mouthful, so we're just going to call them DCFSAs. So Lila, what is a DCFSA?
It's a way to set aside pre-tax dollars to cover eligible child care and dependent care expenses.
And why would you want to do that?
To save on taxes.
Okay, so it lowers your taxable income.
Yeah, it lowers your taxable income. It's coming out of your pay before taxes have been taken. And so at the end of the day, it could put you possibly into a lower tax bracket, so you have less taxes that you owe.
Okay, and so we're talking about this because up until this year, actually technically next year, military service members didn't have access to FSAs for dependent care. And so one of the things that we've seen in the past couple of Congresses is that there's been legislation brought forward. The tricky thing is we didn't actually need legislation, and DoD has implemented these DCFSAs on their own as part of their strengthening the financial security for military families work that Secretary Austin is leading. So that brings us to open enrollment is coming very soon. What date is that open?
Right, November 13th.
Okay, and what does it mean? What is open enrollment? Why is there a special window?
Yeah, it's the time of year when you sign up and it actually doesn't start, it's not effective till January 1st of the next year, but it's your opportunity to opt in, not just for the DCFSA, but lots of other things like TRICARE changes if you want to make them and other things. But but it's the one time of year, unless you have what's called a QLE, a qualifying life event, that you can make a change. So if you PCS or have any other kind of change, like a child is born or any kind of other change like that, you get married, you could opt in, but for most folks, their one time to sign up is during that open season.
Gotcha. And what I will say is, having talked to the people that are working the development of this, they made sure that deployment is a qualifying life event.
Awesome.
And it was because the person that's in charge of it right now is a military spouse and a former Marine.
That's great.
And so they're aware that deployment does change everything, and it is truly a qualifying life event. All right, so how much money can I put into a DCFSA?
You can put up to $5,000 per year into it. And then there are some limitations. For example, you have to be qualified to enroll in it, meaning not just that you have to be a service member on active duty and all, those are some qualifications, but you also, it has to be because a spouse is trying to work or go to school.
Full-time school, right?
Right. So there are some limitations on the dollar amount depending on if it's the spouse going to school versus the spouse working, but the most you could put in would be $5,000.
Okay, so this is not the same thing as the child tax credit. You just, anybody who has a child under the ages of whatever.
The child tax credit is totally different, and you can get the child tax credit and have this DCFSA.
But there's another tax credit called the Child and Dependent Care Tax Credit, right?
Yes.
And so that might be impacted by DCFSAs, right?
Right. DCFSA is great, but it may not be for everybody because there's another tax credit. And remember, DCFSA just potentially reduces your tax burden, whereas the Child and Dependent Care Credit, we don't have an acronym for that one, or I don't know of one. That actually is an actual credit on your taxes, and you can't double dip. You have to choose between one or the other. So,
well, November 13th is right around the corner. So, so how can people make sure that they're taking advantage of this? And also, really quickly to point out, this is a use or lose thing, right? I think you mentioned that when we were talking.
Yeah. If you set aside funds in this DCFSA, you only have until, you get a little bit of a grace period. You have until April 30th of the following year. So if you were to opt into this open season, you would have till April 30th of 2025. Yeah.
Okay.
Which
in the DC area, if you're paying less than $5,000 in the year period, then please tell us what child care provider you're using. But in other places, it could potentially it could be a negative thing.
Right. I mean, and there is a little bit of homework on your part that you have to file for to get the money, the funds out of it. It's so there is a little bit. So if you were totally blanked and didn't do it, then it is potential that you could lose it.
Okay, and this all goes through Fast Feds, which we're not the experts on,
Right.
but there are expert resources. So where do we want to
Yes.
direct people?
Military One Source has some information. FinRed, the Office of Financial Readiness, has information. On the, the federal site, there is a worksheet that is super helpful because you do have to make a decision on whether you want that child independent care credit versus using this DCFSA. And for some folks, it could actually benefit them to take advantage of the credit versus this DCFSA.
We'll really appreciate you talking through this with me. We'll make sure to drop a link to the worksheet in the comments section. Please make sure that you're sharing this with your fellow uniformed service families, because this is an important issue that we want to make sure everyone is making the right decision and saving the most money. Thanks again for tuning in. If you're enjoying these videos, make sure you like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.